Hey everyone, welcome to Life Reflections. Today I'm sharing a life story that might just hit home for you. If you enjoy it, give it a thumbs up, drop a comment with your thoughts, and hit that subscribe button to join me for more moments that matter. Let's dive in.
15 years of marriage, destroyed by one envelope. He thought he could betray me and get away with it. But tonight, I'm taking back my story. They say betrayal cuts deepest when it comes from someone you trusted the most. But I learned betrayal doesn't just cut. It shatters. 15 years ago, I stood beside Nathan Adams as he recited vows he never meant to keep, in a church packed with family and friends. 15 years of building a life together, 3 children, a white-columned house in Charleston, birthday parties, piano recitals, Sunday picnics. 15 years of believing I was the lucky one. That I had married the man everyone else admired, Dr. Nathan Adams, the miracle-working heart surgeon, the golden boy who could do no wrong. I was wrong. When he left me, it wasn't with apologies. It wasn't with regret. It was with a smug smile, a cold stare, and a mistress half my age clinging to his arm, as if the 15 years we spent building a life were a burden he was thrilled to drop. He didn't even have the decency to tell me in private. One evening, after another late emergency surgery, Nathan came home, tossed his keys on the counter, poured himself a glass of bourbon, and said casually, "I'm filing for divorce. Lauren and I are serious. I need a fresh start. A fresh start." Like I was old furniture he needed to discard before moving into a sleeker, trendier life. I signed the papers. I didn't beg. I didn't scream. Nathan thought he had won. He thought he had buried me under the wreckage of our marriage, suffocating in humiliation while he paraded his new love through the city. He thought wrong. Because what Nathan didn't know, what he never imagined in his arrogant, entitled little world, was that the lipstick stain I found on his shirt that morning was only the beginning. The real secret? The one that would dismantle everything he had built? That was waiting, quietly, in a cream-colored envelope. An envelope I would deliver with a smile. An envelope that would end his career, his reputation, and his carefully constructed fantasy life. It started on a Tuesday morning. The twins were at school. My youngest, Lily, was at piano practice. I was in our walk-in closet, gathering clothes for dry cleaning, when I noticed Nathan's gym bag tucked awkwardly behind his rows of polished Oxfords. Curious, I opened it. There, rumpled and smelling faintly of expensive perfume, was the white dress shirt he had supposedly worn to the hospital the night before. But the stain on the collar wasn't blood. It was lipstick. Crimson, vivid, mocking me from pristine cotton. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't an innocent mistake. It was a message. One Nathan hadn't even bothered to hide. At first, I thought the betrayal was the affair. The late-night texts. The weekends with colleagues that were really secret getaways. The day I picked up his phone, a single slip of judgment I'll never regret, and read a text from Lauren. "Last night was amazing. When are you finally leaving her?" That text was supposed to destroy me. Instead, it awakened something. Not rage. Not sorrow. Resolve. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to fight for scraps of his affection. I was going to burn the whole damn illusion to the ground. But what I found next changed everything. While gathering documents for the divorce, my lawyer advised me to check our finances. That's when I found it, over $250,000 quietly drained from our savings over 2 years, funneled into a shell company I'd never heard of, Riverside Holdings. When I confronted Nathan's lawyer, he shrugged and called it private investments. Nothing I needed to worry my pretty little head about. The arrogance was staggering. They thought I was broken. They thought I was defeated. They didn't know I had barely even started. The deeper I dug, the darker the secrets became. Hidden accounts. Offshore funds. Medical documents altered. And then, the discovery that shattered the last fragile pieces of my world. Nathan hadn't just betrayed me with another woman. He had betrayed the very foundation of our family. During our painful years of IVF treatments, when we cried together over failed pregnancies, when we clung to each other in hospital waiting rooms, Nathan had secretly ensured that his own genetic material was never used. Terrified that his hereditary heart condition would reflect poorly on him as a surgeon, he had replaced his contributions with anonymous donor sperm, without telling me. He built a family with me. He raised children with me. All while lying about their blood, their DNA, their very existence. Not to protect me. Not to protect our children. But to protect his damn reputation. The DNA test results arrived 2 weeks later. 3 children. 0 biological connection to Nathan Adams. 0. I could have kept it quiet. I could have disappeared into shame and silence. But no. He left me for his mistress. So I exposed a secret that would destroy everything he ever built. At the Charleston Medical Gala, Nathan stood on stage, basking in applause, ready to accept an award for excellence in medical ethics. The irony was almost poetic. As he smiled for the cameras, I walked up to his table, placed a cream-colored envelope next to his award, and said, "Congratulations on your freedom, Nathan. You're going to need it." Inside. DNA tests proving he wasn't the biological father of his children. Financial records showing embezzlement and fraud. Ethical violations that would cost him his career, his license, and his future. Within an hour, the police escorted Dr. Nathan Adams out of the gala in handcuffs. The mistress looked on, horrified. The perfect life he had sacrificed so much to build crumbled right there, under the glittering chandeliers and judgmental eyes of Charleston's elite. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't look back. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't anger. It's truth. The truth Nathan thought he could bury rose up and buried him instead. And for the first time in 15 years, as I stood there, free, proud, unbroken, I realized. He didn't leave me. I left him. Long before he ever knew it. Once upon a time, if you asked me to describe my life, I would have smiled and said, "I'm living the dream." I had everything. A husband I adored, a man whose hands saved lives in operating rooms and whose arms, I thought, kept me safe. 3 beautiful, vibrant children who filled our home with laughter and chaos and all the sweet noise of life. And a house straight out of a Southern Living magazine, white porch, rocking chairs, magnolia trees swaying in the Charleston breeze. We had matching Christmas pajamas, coordinated family Halloween costumes, and framed photos lining the staircase like a timeline of our perfect life. Nathan Adams wasn't just my husband, he was my best friend, my partner, the father of my children, my safe place. Or so I believed. Our marriage wasn't always easy, what marriage is. Long hospital hours, missed date nights, late night calls pulling him away just when I needed him most. But I believed in us. I believed in what we had built. Every sacrifice I made, leaving my teaching career to stay home with the kids, running the household so Nathan could climb higher in his career, was for us. For our family. And I believed he felt the same. I believed it right up until the night I found the first crack in the perfect facade. The night a crumpled, lipstick-stained shirt told me a story that words never could. The night the man I thought I knew became a stranger in an instant. Finding out Nathan was having an affair was like being shoved into icy water. The shock, the cold, the burning realization. But even then, part of me, the part that had built 15 years of memories with this man, tried to rationalize it. He's under stress. He's confused. Maybe it's just a mistake. Maybe we can fix it. Maybe. That tiny, fragile hope, the hope that things could still be repaired, was what kept me breathing in those first few days. Until I discovered the truth. A truth so vile, so calculated, that it made the affair look like a childish, harmless mistake in comparison. Because while Nathan's betrayal of me was devastating, what he had done to our family was unforgivable. It began innocently enough, or so it seemed. Our struggles with infertility were a private heartbreak. Multiple miscarriages, endless tests, a roller coaster of hope and despair. Nathan held my hand through every appointment. He wiped away my tears after every failed IVF cycle. He whispered promises in the dark when I felt like my body was broken beyond repair. And when we finally conceived, first the twins, then little Lily, it felt like a miracle. A triumph of love and persistence and faith. At least, that's the story I told myself. The truth was far more twisted. In the wake of our divorce proceedings, as I combed through financial records looking for hidden assets, I stumbled upon something strange. A series of large, unexplained withdrawals, payments to a company I had never heard of, Riverside Holdings. Curious, suspicious, I dug deeper. And the more I dug, the uglier it got. Riverside Holdings wasn't just some anonymous investment. It was a shell company Nathan had used to funnel money into secret accounts. Money he intended to keep hidden from me, from the courts, from anyone who might ask uncomfortable questions. But that wasn't the worst of it. Buried in the paperwork, like a ticking bomb, I found something else. Records from the fertility clinic. Emails. Signed forms. Notes. Proof that during our IVF treatments, Nathan had intervened, had ordered the doctors to use anonymous donors instead of his own sperm. Without my knowledge. Without my consent. While I sobbed over failed embryo transfers, while I prayed to a God I wasn't sure even listened, Nathan had already made the decision. The children would never be biologically his. Because he carried a genetic heart condition. A flaw he was too ashamed, too selfish, to risk passing on. A flaw he chose to erase, by erasing himself from our children's DNA. And he never told me. He let me believe. Let me believe in our shared genetics, our shared dreams, our shared victories. He let me tell our children they had Daddy's eyes, Daddy's stubborn chin, Daddy's quick smile. He built a life with me on a foundation of lies. Not to protect me. Not even to protect them. But to protect himself. His reputation. His career. His image as the flawless, godlike Dr. Adams. When I received the DNA test results, the clinical language couldn't soften the blow. The alleged father is excluded as the biological father of the tested children. 0% chance. 0. 3 children. 3 betrayals. 15 years of my life, constructed on a fairy tale. I wish I could tell you that I collapsed. That I curled into a ball and wept for days. But something inside me, something fierce and ancient and raw, ignited instead. I realized, with blinding clarity, that the man I had loved never truly existed. He was a story I wrote, a character I believed in, because I needed to. The real Nathan Adams wasn't the man who held my hand in the delivery room. He was the man who calculated risks and saw his own children as liabilities to be engineered around. My family, the one I thought we built together, wasn't a miracle. It was a lab experiment he had rigged from the start. And when the full weight of that hit me, when I understood that every lullaby, every first step, every whispered I love you had played out under the shadow of a lie, I knew. I couldn't just walk away. I had to expose him. Because this wasn't just about my broken heart. It was about the truth. About our children. About taking back the narrative from a man who thought he could orchestrate every detail of our lives and walk away unscathed. Nathan thought he could control everything. He thought he could rewrite reality. He thought he could erase his mistakes with money, charm, and arrogance. But what he forgot, what so many powerful men forget, is that real power doesn't come from manipulation. It comes from truth. It comes from standing up after you've been shattered and saying, "No more." So, yes, he left me for his mistress. But I uncovered a betrayal so deep it made infidelity look like a minor offense. And with the truth in my hands, with justice burning in my veins, I decided I wasn't going to survive quietly. I was going to burn the house of lies he built, and build something stronger from the ashes. I thought finding out the truth would be the worst part. That after discovering Nathan's affair and the monstrous betrayal hidden beneath it, the pain would settle, the devastation would plateau, and I would eventually find a way to breathe again. I was wrong. The affair, the deception, the DNA tests, they were just the beginning. The real war was only just starting. It began with a knock at my door. A courier, smiling politely, handed me a thick envelope stamped with the seal of Nathan's attorney. Inside, a divorce settlement so insulting it stole the breath from my lungs. According to Nathan Adams, the man who had lied, cheated, and constructed an entire family on fraud, I was entitled to barely enough money to survive for a year. An insult wrapped in legal jargon. It was clear what he intended, to leave me scrambling, humiliated, dependent. In his mind, I was still the quiet, supportive wife who organized fundraisers and smiled politely at hospital galas. The woman who wouldn't dare fight back. The woman who wouldn't dare shatter the illusion he spent so long perfecting. Nathan thought he could gut me, crush me, and walk away whistling. He had no idea who he was dealing with. At first, the emotions came like waves during a hurricane. Rage. Humiliation. Heartbreak. Grief. But the worst, the emotion that cut the deepest, was shame. Not shame for myself. Shame for ever believing him. Forever trusting him. Forever letting him spin a fantasy so elaborate that even I was fooled. And above all, shame for what this would mean for our children. The children I had raised with every ounce of love in my being. The children who had no idea that the man they called Dad had orchestrated their very existence for selfish gain. How could I tell them? How could I look into their wide, trusting eyes and explain that their father had seen them not as miracles, but as insurance policies for his career? I spent nights lying awake, staring at the ceiling, debating. Do I keep the secret? Protect their image of him? Shield them from the wreckage their father created? Or do I tear off the mask, expose everything, and let the pieces fall where they may? Either choice would leave scars. Either choice would tear apart the fantasy they had always believed was real. And meanwhile, Nathan pressed harder. His lawyers flooded my inbox with paperwork. Demands for custody evaluations. Accusations questioning my emotional stability. Claims that I had contributed nothing substantial to the marriage, that I had lived off his career and therefore deserved little more than a polite farewell. It was a strategic assault designed to wear me down. A psychological war to make me doubt myself, to exhaust me until I accepted whatever crumbs he was willing to throw. They underestimated me. Because while Nathan's legal team was sharpening their knives, I was quietly sharpening mine. I hired my own investigators. I dug deeper into the financial records. I found hidden offshore accounts, under-the-table payments, shady medical dealings that could bring down not just Nathan, but the hospital he worked for. I gathered evidence like a general preparing for battle. Because this wasn't just about a divorce anymore. This was about truth. About dignity. About making damn sure that Nathan Adams never did to anyone else what he had done to me, to us. But the hardest war I fought wasn't in courtrooms or behind closed doors. It was inside me. Every instinct screamed at me to protect my children. To protect their image of family, of security, of unconditional love. If I exposed the truth, if I revealed that Nathan wasn't their biological father, I would be destroying more than his career. I would be destroying the very foundation of who they believed they were. Was it worth it? Could I live with the guilt of shattering their world, even if the world they lived in was a carefully manufactured lie? There were nights when I almost caved. Nights when I sat in the dark, clutching old photo albums, remembering the smiles, the laughter, the first steps, the whispered bedtime stories. Nathan may have lied about the biology. But the memories, the love I had for those children, were real. Real enough to make me question whether fighting this war was worth the cost. I could walk away. Take the pitiful settlement. Start over somewhere new. Build a life of quiet dignity far from the ruins of this betrayal. Nathan would keep his reputation. The children would keep their illusions. And I would carry the burden alone. I almost chose that path. Almost. Until one night, as I tucked Lily into bed, she whispered sleepily, "Mommy, I'm glad I have Daddy's heart. He saves people. He's a hero." I stood frozen, blinking back tears. Because she didn't know. She didn't know that her hero had chosen to discard his biological connection to her. That he had built a family not out of love, but out of ambition. And in that moment, the choice became clear. I would not carry his sins for him. I would not bear the weight of his betrayal in silence. If Nathan Adams wanted to protect his image, if he wanted to preserve his carefully crafted life, he should have thought of that before he decided to build it on a lie. I owed it to my children, and to myself, to choose truth over illusion. Even if it meant lighting a match to the life we had built. Even if it meant watching everything burn. So I fought. I fought against the lawyers, the smear campaigns, the whispered gossip at school pickup lines. I fought against the guilt, the shame, the desperate temptation to take the easier road. I fought against Nathan's smug certainty that I would never dare expose him, that I would fold under the pressure. And slowly, methodically, I built my case. Document by document. Testimony by testimony. Truth layered on truth until it was a mountain too massive to be ignored. The day I filed my counterclaim, alleging medical fraud, financial deception, and emotional abuse, Nathan's lawyers finally realized they weren't dealing with the broken woman they had expected. They were dealing with a hurricane. And hurricanes don't ask permission before they tear through lies. Yes, the battle was brutal. Yes, it cost me friends, sleepless nights, pieces of myself I'll never fully get back. But as I stood on the other side of the wreckage, as I watched Nathan's perfect world crumble under the weight of truth, I knew one thing for certain. I hadn't destroyed our family. He had. All I did was refuse to let him get away with it. The night of the Charleston Medical Gala was everything you would expect from a city obsessed with appearances. Crystal chandeliers. Polished marble floors. Waiters in crisp tuxedos circulating with trays of champagne. And a ballroom filled with Charleston's most powerful surgeons, philanthropists, hospital executives, politicians, each one more desperate than the last to be seen, to be admired. It was a night designed for celebration. For the elevation of reputations. For the performance of perfection. And Nathan Adams was set to be the star of the show. He was being honored with the Excellence in Medical Ethics Award, a cruel irony so sharp it almost made me laugh out loud when I first heard about it. Medical ethics. From the man who had fabricated an entire family for career advancement. The man who had lied to his wife, to his children, to his hospital, to his community. It was poetic, really. And tonight, surrounded by the glittering illusion he had built, Nathan Adams was going to watch it all come crashing down. I arrived alone. I wore a black satin gown, simple, elegant, and devastatingly sharp, the very one Nathan had once said made me look too ambitious. Tonight, ambition was exactly the weapon I needed. My hair was pinned in a sleek chignon. Diamond earrings, a gift from Nathan during better times, caught the light every time I turned my head. They glinted like tiny shards of ice. I wasn't here to blend into the background. I was here to finish what he started. As I stepped into the ballroom, I caught sight of Nathan almost immediately. He was holding court near the stage, all easy smiles and confident charm, with Lauren, the mistress, clinging to his arm like the final accessory to his polished image. The crowd orbited around them, laughing at his jokes, admiring his new happiness. Not a soul there suspected that the golden boy of Charleston was seconds away from annihilation. He didn't see me at first. But when he did, when his eyes flickered over to me, when recognition dawned, he smirked. A small, private smirk that said, "You lost. Look at me. Look at what I still have." He thought I was here to watch him win. He had no idea that the match had already been fixed, and he was walking straight into checkmate. The ceremony began with the usual pomp. A long speech from the hospital board chairman about integrity and excellence and community leadership. A montage video of Nathan's accomplishments, his surgeries, his charity work, his tireless devotion to the sacred trust between doctor and patient. If only they knew. My fingers brushed the cream-colored envelope hidden in my clutch. The DNA results. The financial documents. The evidence of fraud. The truth, printed in black and white, ready to detonate. I glanced toward the back of the room where two plainclothes officers waited, hands folded in front of them, their gazes sharp. We were all ready. And now, the chairman announced, "It is my great honor to present the Excellence in Medical Ethics Award to a man whose service to this community has been nothing short of extraordinary, Dr. Nathan Adams." The room erupted in applause. Nathan kissed Lauren lightly on the cheek, straightened his jacket, and strode to the stage like a conquering hero. He took the crystal trophy from the chairman, shook his hand, and turned to the audience, basking in their admiration. And then, of course, he began to speak. "Medicine," he said, "isn't just science. It's trust. It's ethics. It's putting the needs of others above your own." Every word felt like acid burning my skin. Trust? Ethics? Was that what he called secretly replacing his sperm during our IVF treatments? Was that what he called stealing $250,000 from our family? Was that what he called abandoning his wife and children for a shiny new life built on lies? I felt my heart pounding against my ribs, but my hand stayed steady as I pulled the envelope from my clutch. Tonight, I wasn't just exposing a cheater. I was exposing a fraud. As the applause swelled again, Nathan stepped down from the stage, trophy in hand, his smile wide and victorious. I moved forward through the crowd, my heels clicking sharply against the marble, a sound that cut through the murmuring like gunfire. He saw me then. Really saw me. And for the first time that night, the smirk slipped from his face. "Emily," he said, a note of discomfort threading into his voice. "I didn't expect." "Congratulations, Nathan," I interrupted, my voice calm, cold, and clear enough to carry across the nearest tables. "You've really outdone yourself." I placed the envelope into his hands. He frowned, confused, as he tore it open. The moment he began reading, the color drained from his face. The DNA test results. The confirmation that he was not the biological father of our 3 children. The financial records showing siphoned funds into offshore accounts. The documentation of fertility fraud and ethical violations. The crowd began to quiet as people turned to stare. Whispers rippled outward like cracks in glass. "What is that?" Lauren asked, peering over Nathan's shoulder. He didn't answer. His hands trembled. And then, as if on cue, the 2 officers stepped forward. "Dr. Nathan Adams," one said, his voice cutting through the stunned silence. "You are under arrest for medical fraud, financial embezzlement, and violation of medical ethics." Gasps erupted across the ballroom. The chairman of the hospital board, who had been tipped off earlier that day, turned away from the scene, his face rigid with fury and shame. Nathan sputtered, protesting, as the officers handcuffed him in front of Charleston's finest. "You planned this," he hissed at me, venom dripping from every word. "You vindictive little—" "Save it," I said, stepping closer, my voice low enough only he could hear. "You built this lie. You built it brick by brick. I'm just the one tearing it down. As they led Nathan away through the ballroom, his trophy abandoned on the floor, I stood tall and watched. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I didn't feel a shred of pity. Only relief. Only justice. Only the delicious, dizzying freedom of a truth finally unleashed. The fallout was immediate. The hospital issued a statement condemning Nathan's actions and rescinding his award. Investigations were launched into every case he had ever touched. Families demanded answers. The media feasted on the scandal. Nathan's pristine image, the hero surgeon, the devoted father, the community leader, was obliterated in a matter of hours. He lost his license. He lost his reputation. He lost everything he had sacrificed us to protect. And I didn't just survive. I walked out of that ballroom with my head high, my dignity intact, and the first real taste of freedom I'd had in years. Because in the end, truth doesn't just set you free. It burns away the rot. And sometimes, you have to let everything burn to finally breathe. After the dust settled, after the headlines faded, after Nathan's name was dragged through every courtroom and newspaper column, there was a strange, almost unsettling silence. It wasn't triumph I felt in those first quiet days after his downfall. It wasn't revenge. It was something deeper. Something purer. Empowerment. For 15 years, I had lived inside a gilded cage, too beautiful to recognize as a prison. I had sacrificed parts of myself, my dreams, my ambitions, my voice, piece by piece, believing it was for a greater good. For love. For family. For stability. I had learned how to be small. How to smile when I wanted to scream. How to smooth over every crack, patch every hole, cover every wound, so no one, especially not myself, would see the truth. Nathan hadn't just built lies around our children's DNA. He had built lies around me. Around who I was allowed to be. Around what I was allowed to want. Around how much of myself I was allowed to exist in the world. And when the truth exploded, when every rotten plank of that life splintered into ash, I was left standing amid the wreckage, not broken, but free. Justice wasn't some cinematic moment where the villain was booed off stage. Justice was quieter than that. It was sitting in a courtroom as Nathan was formally charged, knowing that the system, flawed though it often was, had recognized what he had done. It was hearing the hospital announce the closure of the fertility program, the investigation of every case he had touched. It was seeing the people he had fooled for so long, the administrators, the colleagues, the friends, finally drop their blinders. It wasn't just that his betrayal was exposed. It was held accountable on a massive, public scale. He couldn't rewrite the story anymore. He couldn't gaslight his way out. The truth, once revealed, was unstoppable. And what about me? After years of living inside Nathan's shadow, inside the life he dictated, I found myself with a terrifying, exhilarating blank slate. No more scripts. No more roles to play. Just me. I rebuilt my life slowly, with trembling hands at first. I found a new house, not as grand as the old one, but filled with light. I went back to teaching, not because I needed the money, but because I needed to remember who I had been before him. I built new friendships, real ones, with people who didn't care about appearances or pedigrees. And with every choice, every tiny, defiant step forward, I realized I was living a life of truth. Messy. Complicated. Raw. But real. I no longer had to contort myself into a version that made someone else comfortable. I no longer had to live a second-hand dream. For the first time in 15 years, I woke up each morning without wondering if I was enough. Because I already was. There's a certain grief that comes with realizing your entire foundation was a lie. The birthdays, the holidays, the anniversaries, you can't erase those memories. You can't pretend they never happened. But you can reclaim them. You can choose to believe that your love was real, that your sacrifices mattered, that your hope and joy and laughter weren't wasted, even if the person you shared them with didn't deserve them. Those moments belong to you, not to the liar, not to the fraud, not to the man who tried to turn your life into a performance for his benefit. Sometimes, the life you think you built on love was actually built on lies. But that doesn't mean you're a fool. It doesn't mean you're weak. It means you believed. And belief, real, unfiltered, wholehearted belief, is not something to be ashamed of. It's something to be proud of. Because believing in love, in goodness, in the possibility of something beautiful, even in the face of betrayal, is not a flaw. It's a strength. And when you realize the life you built was a lie, you have the power, the right, to tear it down. Not out of spite. Not out of bitterness. But out of love. Love for yourself. Love for the future. Love for the woman you are still becoming. You can rebuild something stronger. Something truer. Something that no one can take from you again.
That's it for today's story on Life Reflections. I'd love to hear your take. Drop a comment below with your thoughts or a story of your own. If you enjoyed this, give a like and subscribe to keep the reflections coming. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.